Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I use she, her pronouns, and I am going to be your host for today. Today, we have Caverly Morgan leading. She is the founder of Presence Collective in Peace in Schools. She will be guiding us through a meditation, about 30 minutes, and at the end, we'll have time for a Q&A. At that time, if you have a question, you can use the Ask a Question below, or you can use the chat box to request to come on screen, and I can help bring you on screen then. Before I bring her on, I have a few announcements. First, thank you to Sangha Live. Sangha Live is this platform that allows us to have these teachings every weekday, 8 a.m. PST, and we are run through donations from all of you. So if you're able to, you can use the green button below to make a donation today. Tomorrow is June 19th, a holiday or a day known as Juneteenth, and this is the day that slavery ended in 1865. To honor this day, we have an amazing guest speaker, Dr. Sarah King. I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Sarah King. Dr. Sarah King, she, her, they, is a UCLA-trained political and learning scientist, neuroscientist, social entrepreneur, public speaker, and yoga and meditation instructor. She has over 20 years of experience as a research scientist and specializes in the study of the relationship between mindfulness, community healing medicine, and social justice. She is also the founder of Mind Heart Consulting, offering up workshops, seminars, and evidence-based research projects based on the framework she had developed called the Science of Social Justice. So if you're able to, please come tomorrow and check out Dr. Sarah King. She will also be leading a webinar today through Presence Collective. She will be leading it with Rashid Hughes, who's the core facilitator and co-leader of the Heart Refuge Dharma Community for BIPOC in DC. Their webinar today is called Aggression Masquerading as Compassion. This is 2 p.m. PST. It's donation-based. No one turned away due to lack of funds. We are running these webinars through Presence Collective every Thursday. Next week is Michelle Johnson. The week after is Latifah Till. And the week after that is Lanisha Duke. Also, through Presence Collective, Caverly does her usual Wednesday night sits. We had one last night. And they are 7 p.m. PST, also donation-based. No one turned away due to lack of funds. Last but not least, Caverly wrote a children's book called A Kid's Book About Mindfulness, and that's available for pre-order now. I will be including all of these links in the chat box later.
Alyssa, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you. All right, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm so glad to be here. I'm really glad that Alyssa, again, for those of you who come every day, I'm really glad that Alyssa, again, got to highlight Dr. Sarah King's work. She, as you're hearing, will be a guest teacher tomorrow. I have not had a guest teacher come to this platform yet, and I'm really excited to bring Dr. King into this space. She's become a good friend, and she's becoming an integral part of the unfolding of Peace in Schools and Presence Collective. She's a real visionary, and her Science of Social Justice framework, which equates social justice with well-being, ties those two things, marries those two things, is something that's impacted me and the organization in a profound way. I'm excited to share the mic in this way. I'm excited to have you all meet Dr. Sarah King tomorrow. So today I bring in, hello friends, thanks for saying hello in the sidebar. It's really good to see that you're here. So today, as Juneteenth, it's actually there's a week of Juneteenth attention, acknowledgement that's being paid in many circles, and then for many folks, there's a sort of special highlighting tomorrow on what happened in Texas in 1865. And as those of you know who have shown up on a regular basis, it's been important to me as a white Dharma teacher to be acknowledging my relationship to what's happening in our world. Anyone who's practiced with me knows that for years now, I've been focusing on allowing ourselves to see that the absolute realm of existence and that the relative realm of existence can only be teased apart when we're looking at reality through the lens of the conditioned mind. So in light of that, I've wanted to highlight Black poets. You've noticed that I've shared many poems by Black poets recently as I've begun a meditation. And I just wanted to name and acknowledge that one friend of mine recently, actually this morning, who is Black, and I were in a text conversation about whiteness in relationship to all of this. You know, what I've been reflecting on this morning, friends, is the way in which it's a deep manifestation of whiteness. And if you're new to practicing with me, you might not have heard me quote the Radical Dharma definition of whiteness, the whiteness as a manifestation of, it's like the practices and protocols, I could say, of the, that uphold white supremacy. So the byproducts of white supremacy, that which is upholding white supremacy, manifest in the form of whiteness, and that doesn't mean limited to white skin. So as many of you know, I've been focused on how to be with these world events, acknowledge my own whiteness, truly support the movement of Black Lives Matter from the recognition of our non-separateness. And this morning, this text exchange was really compelling and important to me, because what arose for me in the exchange was the recognition that each year we have, quote unquote, Black History Month. And I was reflecting on the way in which I grew up with Black History Month being one kind of moment of time in which there was learning that went beyond what was the quote unquote normal learning in this country of everything being from a white perspective. So I just want to name that. I want to name that complexity this morning. I want to name that my intention is to be sharing poets that I might not normally otherwise share. Last night, I learned of this poem that I had never heard before that I got excited to share with you, especially in preparation for Juneteenth being tomorrow. And I think it's important as someone who identifies as white to acknowledge that that there's the importance of commitment to more than just this splash in the pan of acknowledgement. This is this work of the practice that I was trained in, originally monastically, of like unraveling our relationship with the ego. In other words, seeing how the conditioned mind, how we get identified with the conditioned mind, and how we can let go of stories and narratives, the kinds of things we've been focusing on in these calls. That's an ongoing practice. And for me, this practice, and I would encourage all of us to consider that the practice of anti-racism is a social form of that personal practice that so many of us are seeped in. So I find comfort actually in knowing that this work of attending to, paying attention to how the distortion of whiteness manifests is going to be an ongoing practice. Just as seeing how the ego arises and we identify with it is an ongoing practice. So with all of that disclaimer, if you will, meaning acknowledgement that we can't stay identified with the personal conditioning of trying to do this right, or we'll be stuck in inaction and total silence and paralysis, which isn't helpful. I bring to you another Black poet. So settle in for your experience of meditation this morning. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your care during this time. Thank you for showing up to explore and have inquiry around that which is most authentic, real, true, and to collectively, together here in the experience of Sangha, unpacking what appears to get in the way. The poem I brought to you today is called Theme for English B, and it's by Langston Hughes. The instructor said, "Go home and write a page tonight, and let that page come out of you. Then it will be true." I wonder if it's that simple. I am 22, colored, born in Winston-Salem. I went to school there, then Durham, then here to this college on a hill above Harlem. I am the only colored student in my class. The steps from the hill lead down into Harlem through a park. Then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th, and I come to Y, the Harlem branch Y, where I take the elevator up to my room, sit down, and write this page. It's not easy to know what is true for you or me at 22, my age, but I guess I'm what I feel and see and hear. Harlem, I hear you. Hear you, hear me. We too, you, me, talk on this page. I hear New York too. Me, who? Well, I like to eat, sleep, drink, and be in love. I like to work, read, learn, and understand life. I like a pipe for a Christmas present, or records, Bessie, Bop, or Bach. I guess being colored doesn't make me not like the same things other folks like who are other races. So will my page be colored that I write? Being me, it will not be white. But it will be a part of you, instructor. You are white, yet a part of me as I am a part of you. That's American. Sometimes perhaps you don't want to be a part of me, nor do I often want to be a part of you. But we are, that's true. As I learn from you, I guess you learn from me, although you're older and white and somewhat more free. This is my page for English B. Thank you, friends, for receiving that poem in this space. In this shared space of presence that we've been cultivating together daily. As we sit together in presence, this togetherness, more than simply a metaphor of our inherent togetherness. Simply notice what arises for you with those words. What comes? What bubbles up? In the same way that we've been practicing not taking it personally, when we get identified with the conditioned mind, noticing, for example, negative self-talk or stories that lead down the road of suffering. Can you practice not taking personally whatever's arising in response to that poem? Can you simply notice? If you're white on this call, you might have a response to that poem which differs from a Black, Indigenous, or person of color on this call. Or it might be quite similar. Can we hold our difference and our sameness at the same time? Watch for the slightest movement in you that might arise, the movement of othering. Othering others, or perhaps even othering parts of yourself. Watch for that movement. Not from a place of harsh discipline and vigilance, but from the openness of clear seeing. Simply notice. Notice what arises when you ask yourself the question, how do I participate in othering? Again, there's a spectrum there, the othering of different parts of me, the othering of other people. We've spoken a lot in this context throughout these teachings about the subject-object relationship. Whenever I'm identified as the subject, whatever's viewed as the object will be othered. Prejudice arises there. Bias. Hate. Hate is a byproduct of this distortion. Love is what's there when the distortion falls away. Awareness sees through this distortion the same way that awareness recognizes clouds simply as that which veils the sun. Through practice, we can consciously direct the attention to the sun, to what's beyond distortion or veiling. Recognizing that even these clouds are not separate from experience. The clouds create the appearance that the sun is gone. Our processes of othering create the appearance that we are separate. Surrender the attention to what's beyond that appearance, what's underneath that appearance. Rest the attention in inherent belonging. Rest the attention in being. The being that doesn't belong to you, an individual, isolated, separate self. But rather this shared being. This shared being of which we all belong. Friends, thank you. Now is my moment to remind you to donate to Sangha Live, and the proceeds that come in case you're new, they get shared between the teacher. In my case, the proceeds go to supporting Peace in Schools and Presence Collective and me bringing these teachings into the world. And the proceeds go to Sangha Live so that we can keep these teachings going. So thank you, Lisa. And can I include the link to the poem in the chat box? I can just copy right now that poem. It wasn't via a link that I was reading from. So, it says, your message is too long. Try reducing it to under 500 characters. Well, I dare edit Langston Hughes poetry. No, I will not be doing that. So, okay, friends, that won't work. Alyssa, if you could just post a link, please, to that poem. It's called Theme for English B by Langston Hughes. So, yeah, thank you, Ellen, so much love. Thank you. Jane, thank you. Friends, let's open it up now. What arose for you in that meditation? What What was alive? What would you like to discuss today in relationship to practice, which is in relationship to everything? Thank you, Alyssa, for posting the links to these upcoming opportunities. If you're new to this group, you can put a note in the sidebar if you'd be willing to come on screen. Many of you who practice here regularly know that that's my favorite way to interact, is to get to see you face to face so that we can have an exchange. So you would just write in the sidebar that you'd like to come on screen and have a discussion about practice. And Alyssa will bring you on. Alyssa, thank you for posting a link to that poem. And then you could also just put a question in the question box or a question or comment on the sidebar. Let's begin this short discussion today with just typing in a word or phrase of what you're present to now. It's always an option on these calls to come and receive and be, and not call in, not write in. That's fine. But for those who'd like to bring their voices into the space, do so now by writing in that sidebar. What is alive for you now? What are you present to? What are you noticing? What's true in your direct experience of this moment? What's here now? Joyce puts a good perspective on our prejudice, just like a veil, just like our other conditioned thoughts. Oh, thank you, Joyce, for seeing that link. Alice reflecting on the process of othering. Jeffrey, if only I could be here now. Where else would you be, Jeffrey? You're always only here now. John and Nancy, the power of judgment in identifying the other. Yeah, thank you. Recognizing the role of judgment in identifying and labeling other. John, thank you. Awareness of subtle forms of othering, objects, myself, recognizing senses of superiority and whiteness. Yeah, thank you. John, your comment prompts me to acknowledge that I've been watching various spiritual teachers comment on this time that we're in. And many spiritual teachers who identify as white, I notice, are commenting on the importance of focusing on love. I have no argument, about the importance of focusing on love. None at all. But I've noticed it's been striking to me to see how often we are quick to focus on love without the naming of what gets in the way of that experience. And specifically, I've noticed that many white teachers were quick to not want to acknowledge how our conditioning around whiteness is the source of racial othering. Of racism. So in the same way that if you're dedicated to a spiritual practice, you're probably quick to want to release the manifestations of the ego that you see as in the way, veiling your experience of true nature. I wanted to invite us today, again, this is not a one-time invitation, it's not a one-off invitation, to see all the different ways we participate in collective conditioning that, as you just named, John, we've had an exchange on this call, so I happen to know that at least you present as white. So, yes, John, recognizing the conditioned view of superiority, allowing yourself to touch the eagerness to release that conditioning, to not own it in the same way that you are quick to not want to own the personal conditioning of, let's say, I'm conditioned to believe I'm not good enough. So if we're ready to release that conditioning, knowing that it veils, it distorts true nature, how can we be just as eager to recognize, see, name, own, and release our collective conditioning? Thank you for writing in, John. John and Nancy, the commonality of our origins, the 4 Eves, the 4 mitochondrial Eves. Nancy, thank you. I'd love to have you say more or come on screen. I'm not entirely sure what you're referencing about Eves. I do know what mitochondria is, but say more if you would. I'd like to be able to follow you, be with you. Jim, I feel most separation and othering when witnessing unkindness. Sometimes I just can't relate at all to others' actions. They feel so alien to me. That suffering is not acknowledged. Yeah, so I think, Jen, I think what you're recognizing is that you, tell me if I'm with you, Jim, you see unkindness and you're quick to want to other who's being unkind, that the action feels alien. Jim, in these moments, I find it helpful, rather than to distance myself in such a moment, to ask, and how am I like that? How is that too in me? The capacity for unkindness. If you can't find the capacity for unkindness in you, it's likely that there's something blocking your capacity, your inherent capacity to see that. I'm not suggesting that's true for you, Jim. I'm just suggesting that that's a good place for us to look. To never fall for the story that we don't have that in us too. We're all of it. The uncomfortable truth, all of it arises in us. And the us that arises, that everything arises in, is shared. So the moment I separate myself and out and say, well, that's not me, is the moment that I'm actually not recognizing who I truly am, that true nature is being veiled. Thank you, Jim, for writing in. John and Nancy, you're willing to come on. Great. So Alyssa, please, please bring on John or Nancy, or both. Yeah. George, you feel the need of coming back to the poem. Yeah, thank you. Then do, by all means. Well, you must be Nancy. Hi.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay. I can hear you, Nancy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay. Let's see. Mute. I can mute on your end. Do you see?
I'm so sorry.
Well, can you hear me, Caverly?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes, she can.
You can hear me? I can't hear you, but I'll just say that what I was thinking about is, in genetic testing, if we go back in time, if we have our parentage behind us, if we go back and back, what I understand is that we originate from 4 mothers, 4 Eves, and that all of our DNA has come from them. And when I was doing the meditation, I just was feeling your word, otherness, was very powerful to me. And I sort of went back and was thinking about the power of our origins as a human race. And I know that there has been power in DNA tests when people realize that many of us, most of us, have a mix of ancestry. Mm-hmm. And it has really helped me with the prayer, may all beings be from suffering. I feel like since I've joined this Sangha, that I'm honestly able to hold, quote unquote, enemies or others in like a light of true love. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for calling in. Are you still not able to hear me?
Maybe you should go on.
Okay. Sorry, I can't hear you.
So maybe you should go on.
So thank you.
Thank you.
How do I go off?
Okay, good. I hope that you can hear me now. Nancy, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sorry for that technical clunkiness of just whatever could be happening with technology somewhere. Crowdcast, your computer, my computer, who knows? But thank you. It's lovely to see your face, and I'm really glad you called in. And I can reflect to you that what I hear you feeling impacted by is the importance of giving the attention to that which is shared. I honor that movement of recognizing what is shared, seeing our tendency and capacity to other, our collective tendency and capacity to other, naming it, being able to let it go. And as you're hearing, I think it's particularly helpful for us. And right now, by us, I mean that you and I, as people who present as white, Nancy, to see how we're participating in a really massive structural form of othering. We can release and let go of our participation in that form of othering as a practice, in the same way that we wish to release other forms of identification. And again, I underline this today because I see in so many spiritual circles, we're quick to want to release what feels like personal conditioning. How are we slower to let go of the collective conditioning that benefits us, that puts us in a position of power, for example, has privileges associated with it? All of that is blocking the recognition of shared being. And we suffer, no matter where we are on that line, we suffer from the byproduct of distortion, no matter where we fall in that experience. No one wins in a system of oppression, just as no one wins in any forms of participation of distortion. This feels a little clunky. I'll need to refine this statement later, but hopefully you can feel the intention behind it to point to how our participation in these forms of distortion, whether they're personal or collective, lead to the same suffering, the same experience of the illusion of separation, being identified with that illusion. So may we be grateful for any and all insights that support the clear seeing of what gets in the way of our shared true nature, our shared being, our inherently connected. Not connected like two things that are separate that connect, but that's why I like the word shared. Not even connected being, but I'll come back again to shared being. So Mimosa, you love this last bit about collective conditioning. I feel understanding here. Thank you. Thank you, Mimosa. Jem, yes, I find it difficult to open to my heart to those I see as doing things that make my heart full of sadness. But I try to touch into that all beings suffer and we all want to be happy deeply. We all want the same thing. We all want the same happiness. We all long for the same love and acceptance. Those aren't individual longings, that's shared longing. arising within this shared being. Thank you, friends. I'll be in the background tomorrow, but I won't see you tomorrow because I too will be enjoying learning from Dr. Sarah King, being with Dr. Sarah King. So please do join tomorrow. And tomorrow specifically, please donate generously if you can, so that we can support financially this wonderful Black teacher who I really am excited to have you see and learn from. Thank you, friends. See you tomorrow.